My name is Sandra Whitlock, and at 63, I believed I was closing the final chapter of a life built on endurance. The morning everything nearly ended began like any other, quiet, orderly, familiar. I woke before sunrise, reviewed the documents one last time, and told myself I was ready to step back. By noon, Whitlock Supply Group, the company I had carried through grief, doubt, and decades of relentless work, would no longer be under my name. It would belong to my son. I had built that company after my husband died. One day, I was planning holidays with him. The next, I was standing in a warehouse full of men who assumed I would sell and disappear. Instead, I stayed. I learned contracts, logistics, negotiations, and losses. I learned how loneliness feels when it wears a business suit. I did not build an empire. I built stability. And that morning, I believed I was handing it to family. Lucas arrived early, which surprised me. He looked calm, almost relieved, dressed carefully, his posture confident. His wife, Claire, followed minutes later, polished and composed, holding a tray with 3 cups of coffee. She smiled warmly, the way people do when they want to appear harmless. "Thought we'd make this comfortable," she said, placing a cup into my hands. Before I could reply, Patricia Austa entered the room. Patricia had worked in my home for 18 years. She knew my routines better than anyone alive. She knew how I took my coffee. She knew when my smile was real and when it was just habit. She greeted us quietly and moved across the room, but as she passed me, her foot caught the edge of the rug. The coffee spilled down my lap and onto the carpet. Claire gasped, sharp and irritated. Lucas frowned. The moment froze, then Patricia leaned closer to apologize. Her voice dropped so low it barely existed. "Don't drink it," she whispered. "Please trust me." My heart lurched, but I did not react. I nodded as if she were only apologizing for the mess. When no one was looking, I exchanged the cups. The papers were placed in front of me. Thick folders, tabs marked, everything prepared in advance. Lucas spoke about the future, about responsibility, about how tired I must be. He said the company needed younger leadership, quicker decisions. Claire nodded at all the right moments, her eyes never leaving my hands. I lifted the coffee and took a small sip. It tasted wrong. I set it down. 5 minutes later, Claire stopped talking. Her sentence cut off mid-word. Her hands began to shake. The color drained from her face. She tried to stand and collapsed. Chaos filled the room. Lucas shouted her name. Patricia froze near the doorway. I stayed seated, my body calm, my thoughts racing. Claire's body convulsed against the floor as Lucas knelt beside her. Sirens followed soon after. And as I watched my daughter-in-law being lifted onto a stretcher, a truth settled over me with chilling clarity. That coffee had never been meant for her. To understand why that morning mattered, you have to understand the years before it. 15 years earlier, my husband died suddenly of a heart attack. Lucas was 23 then, quiet, observant, promising he would take care of me one day. I believed him. I tried to shield him from pressure, from responsibility, from the harshness of leadership. Time did not soften him, it hardened him. As the company grew, so did his impatience. He spoke of success as if it were owed. He questioned my decisions publicly. He stopped asking for guidance and started waiting for me to step aside. Claire encouraged it in subtle ways. She never challenged me outright. She framed suggestions as concern. She talked often about efficiency, about risk, about my age. "You've done enough, Sandra," she would say softly. "You deserve rest." What she meant was that I was in the way. I ignored the warning signs, the conversations that stopped when I entered a room, the way Claire watched me, not with affection, but with calculation. Trust makes you generous with doubt and blind to danger. Patricia noticed everything. She noticed when Claire arrived early on meeting days, when Lucas stayed late without explanation, when I complained of dizziness and brushed it off as stress. She did not brush it off. I trusted my family. I trusted my son. I believed love meant safety. By the time that Tuesday morning arrived, I thought I was preparing for retirement. In truth, I was preparing to disappear. The meeting was held in my living room instead of the office. Claire said it would feel more personal. Lucas laid the documents out before we even sat down. He spoke smoothly, confidently, pointing to signature lines, explaining how simple it all was. The coffee sat warm in my hand, unfamiliar in smell and taste. Across the room, Patricia kept cleaning things that were already clean, her eyes fixed on the cup. When she spilled it, Claire reacted with irritation, Lucas with annoyance, Patricia with fear. After Claire collapsed, the house filled with movement, paramedics, questions, noise. Lucas never once looked at the coffee. Not once. At the hospital, doctors moved quickly. Claire was rushed into intensive care. Lucas paced, made calls, spoke confidently with staff. He never asked how I felt. A doctor finally approached us. Her voice was calm but careful. Claire had been poisoned. Lucas answered questions too quickly. He said we all had the same coffee. That was not true. When the doctor mentioned the police, Lucas agreed immediately. Then he turned to me and said something that ended any remaining doubt. We should have the house cleaned, he said casually, before investigators get there. Innocent people protect lives. Guilty people protect scenes. That night, I stepped outside the hospital and made a call of my own. Patricia answered on the first ring. She didn't ask about Claire. She asked if I was safe, and in that moment, I knew this story was far from over. The next day, I met Patricia at a small cafe, away from the hospital and away from prying eyes. She looked calm, controlled, but her eyes held the weight of someone who had carried a secret too long. I could see the tension in her hands, the subtle quiver that betrayed months of silent vigilance. She did not waste time. You need to know everything, she said quietly, sliding a small notebook across the table. I've been watching them for months. I leaned back, my fingers gripping the edge of the table. My pulse was steady, but my mind raced. Claire and Lucas? I asked. What exactly have you seen? Patricia took a slow breath and began from the beginning. At first, it was the little things. Claire arriving early, insisting on making my coffee herself, sending Patricia out of the room under flimsy pretenses. She described moments I had ignored, thinking them trivial, but they were all pieces of a puzzle I hadn't realized existed. Then your health began to change, Patricia continued. Dizziness, nausea, fatigue. You blamed it on stress, on age. But I noticed patterns. The symptoms always followed certain mornings, always after Claire prepared your coffee. My stomach tightened. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, though part of me already knew. Patricia's voice softened. Who would believe me? A housekeeper accusing the company heir and his wife? I started documenting everything instead. Dates, times, your symptoms. I photographed everything I could. I even left my phone on counters, recording fragments of conversations near the study. She hesitated, then showed me the photos. Claire near my cup, stirring slowly, checking her watch afterward. And the recordings, Lucas discussing timelines and money, Claire speaking about dosage and timing as if instructing a team at work. They spoke about me like I was already gone. My hands went cold. The coffee, I whispered. That morning, she wasn't trying to poison Claire. She was trying to kill me. Patricia nodded. Yes, that morning, Claire added more than usual, enough to finish the job. I panicked, I spilled the cup, I warned you. And when she drank the wrong one, their plan collapsed. The enormity of it hit me in waves. The son I had raised, trusted with everything, had chosen money over my life. The woman I had welcomed into my home, treated like family, risked everything to save me. Patricia continued, her tone matter-of-fact but heavy. They didn't hesitate. They were meticulous. Money had already been moved into private accounts. Life insurance policies were taken out in your name. They weren't waiting for you to retire. They were waiting for you to die. I stayed silent, letting the words sink in. The betrayal was complete, suffocating. I had been blind, trusting, believing that blood meant loyalty. It didn't. Awareness did. Courage did. And Patricia had both in abundance. The next days blurred into a careful orchestration of evidence collection. Photographs, recordings, detailed notes. Everything Patricia had gathered became crucial. The police arrived with precision. For the first time, I saw the faces of people who treated facts over feelings. They asked questions, verified details, and for the first time, I didn't have to explain fear or suspicion. Patricia's documentation spoke for itself. Lucas and Claire were arrested within 48 hours. I did not attend. Seeing them in handcuffs would not have changed the truth I already held. The man I raised had been replaced by someone willing to plan his mother's death for inheritance. The woman he married was complicit. At the hospital, Claire remained unconscious for days. Lucas refused to visit, leaving the staff to relay updates. I realized then that his concern had never been for her or for anyone. It was for appearances, control, calculation. As the legal process began, Patricia remained by my side. Not as a caretaker, but as an ally, a partner. She helped me navigate the aftermath, safeguarding documents, coordinating with lawyers, ensuring that my testimony would be based on facts, not emotion. The courtroom was unlike what I imagined. No shouting, no dramatics. Only truth laid bare, methodically, piece by piece. Patricia testified first. 18 years of careful observation, months of meticulous documentation. She presented the photographs and recordings. Every fragment of their planning, every whisper about dosage, every comment on my health, all meticulously recorded. The judge acknowledged her bravery, and the jury leaned in, captivated by her clarity and composure. Then came the recordings. Lucas's calm, detached voice filled the room. Claire followed, precise and confident, explaining the poison, the timing, the symptoms, like she was detailing an office procedure rather than a crime. Their words were chilling. They discussed me as though I were already gone, joking about timelines and decisions. The court was silent, the weight of their betrayal pressing down like a physical force. Financial records followed. Transfers from company accounts, policies taken out in my name without my knowledge, every transaction meticulously accounted for. It became clear that this was not a crime of passion or confusion. It was calculated, premeditated, cold. Lucas had not faltered in his role. Claire had not hesitated. They had plotted with precision. Throughout the trial, I watched them carefully. Not out of anger, but to understand the depth of their choices. Lucas met my gaze once, eyes devoid of remorse, filled only with frustration and calculation. Claire never regained consciousness until late in the proceedings, her own silence a haunting reminder of the plan gone wrong. As the verdict approached, I felt none of the relief one might expect. There was no satisfaction in seeing my son condemned. Only clarity. Survival, I realized, was no longer about family or loyalty or even love. It was about choosing life over trust when trust had been betrayed. When the judge finally pronounced the sentences, both Lucas and Claire received life without parole, I felt nothing. Not relief, not triumph. Just the certainty that the truth had finally caught up with them, and that I was still here, still breathing, still alive. Patricia was exonerated. The judge thanked her personally for her courage, acknowledging that without her intervention, my life would have ended that morning. She was no longer an employee, no longer a silent observer. She was a hero, and I owed her everything. After the courtroom, we walked together in silence. The press called out, questions about my feelings, my son, the ordeal. I did not answer. I only said what needed to be said. Justice is not a feeling. It is a result, and the cost of greed is always higher than people expect. In the weeks that followed, I made major changes. I sold the house where betrayal had lived alongside me, where every room held memories now tainted by calculation. I stepped away from the company for months, not because I feared responsibility, but because I needed clarity. Leadership requires a clear mind, and mine had been shattered by betrayal. During that time, Patricia stayed close. She did not hover, she did not push, she did not offer advice unless I sought it. Every morning, she brought coffee, quietly consistent, the same way she had for years. One afternoon, I asked her why she stayed. "Because someone had to remind me that loyalty still exists," she said simply. Her words became a guiding principle. I returned to the company, not to reclaim power, but to protect it. Boundaries were set, and control was no longer shared out of obligation. It was safeguarded with vigilance. Together, Patricia and I created a foundation to support individuals facing abuse from those they trusted most. People like me, people who had been betrayed by their own blood. And through all of this, one truth remained. Survival was not about revenge nor punishment. It was about living honestly, fiercely, and beyond fear. The people who save your life are not always your family. Sometimes they are strangers or quiet allies who refuse to remain silent. The morning after the trial, I awoke with a strange quietness surrounding me. No alarms, no chaos, No frantic phone calls. Only the knowledge that the people who had intended my death were behind bars, and that, for the first time in decades, I could breathe without calculating danger in every shadow. Yet relief did not feel like triumph. It felt empty, hollow, a silence heavy with memories that would never fade. Patricia was at my side as she had been since the hospital. Her presence was steady, unwavering, the quiet assurance of someone who had risked everything for another's life. I realized then that survival wasn't about fighting alone. It was about knowing there is someone in your corner, watching, protecting, even when the rest of the world fails you. We walked together through the now empty house one last time. Each room whispered secrets I no longer wished to hear. The office where Lucas had plotted, the kitchen where Claire had prepared the deadly coffee, the hallways where I had once felt safe. I could not undo the past, but I could control my future. I sold it, I told Patricia quietly. I can't live here anymore. Every corner reminds me of who I trusted and who betrayed me. Patricia nodded. You don't owe them anything. Not their forgiveness. Not their memory. Only yourself. The company, Whitlock Supply Group, had survived despite everything. I had built it from nothing, and now it was time to protect it differently. With Patricia's help, I returned to the office, not as a passive figurehead, but as a leader fully aware of the stakes. Boundaries were enforced, every decision scrutinized, every risk assessed. But unlike before, I no longer carried the weight alone. Patricia became not just my ally, but my equal. Together, we restructured operations, focusing not only on profit, but on protecting the company from internal threats. During those months, I realized the depth of Lucas's betrayal. He hadn't hesitated. Every smile, every conversation, every word had been carefully measured. He and Claire had plotted with precision, calculating my vulnerabilities, my routines, my habits. Their plan was methodical and cold. It wasn't greed alone. It was the removal of an obstacle, the mother who refused to step aside. The clarity of their intentions was horrifying, yet it provided the foundation I needed to rebuild my life. I created a foundation in the company for people like me, older individuals, facing exploitation, abuse, or betrayal by those they trusted most. Victims who had believed in family, only to find themselves targeted for inheritance, control, or manipulation. Patricia worked alongside me. Her years of experience and meticulous observation now applied to helping others. Loyalty, I realized, is rare, but it is powerful when wielded with integrity. Months later, I received word that Claire would never regain consciousness fully, her life permanently altered by her own actions. Lucas remained in prison, each day a reminder of the choices he made and the lives he had endangered. Justice had been served, but the scars were mine to bear. Not vengeance, not punishment, just the quiet, resolute knowledge that I had survived. I often reflect on that morning, the spilled coffee, Patricia's whispered warning, the chaos that followed. I imagine how different it could have been, how easily I could have joined Claire on that hospital bed, the life I had built ending not by circumstance but by design. And yet here I am, alive, clear-eyed, in control. The lesson, painfully learned, was that blood does not guarantee loyalty. Love does not ensure protection. Only awareness, courage, and the refusal to remain silent can preserve life when those around you fail in the ways you never imagined. Patricia's courage had saved me, and her integrity became a guiding principle in my life. Returning to the company, I faced the difficult task of redefining trust. I no longer assumed that family equaled loyalty. Every decision was measured, every partnership scrutinized. But I also learned to value the quiet heroes, the people who act without recognition, who observe without judgment, and who act decisively when the moment demands it. Patricia had been that person for me, and I made sure her role was honored, her insights valued. Together, we protected not just the company, but the principle that integrity and vigilance could overcome deceit and greed. Evenings became moments of reflection. I would sit alone, sometimes with Patricia, sometimes in silence, replaying the events in my mind, not as trauma, but as lessons. Lessons in trust, in human nature, in the subtle signs of danger that often go unnoticed. The betrayal of my son was profound, but it did not define me. Survival did. And survival demanded clarity, patience, and the courage to act decisively. The foundation we established grew, helping countless individuals who faced exploitation from those they once loved. People came to us frightened, unsure, doubting their own perceptions. Patricia and I guided them, showing that awareness is as vital as protection. We became advocates for those silenced by fear, teaching them that life could be reclaimed when truth is sought and courage embraced. Over time, I understood that my life could no longer follow the patterns I had known. Family, as I had imagined it, had been shattered, but a new form of family emerged, one built on trust, shared values, and mutual protection. The people who genuinely cared for me, who acted without expectation, became the foundation of my future. Not blood, not titles, not inherited bonds, but action, integrity, and unwavering loyalty. Every decision I made afterward was deliberate. Every partnership scrutinized. Every interaction measured. But I did not become cold or withdrawn. I became aware, vigilant, and selective, choosing carefully who could access my life and my work. Patricia remained my closest confidant, not as an employee, but as a partner, a co-guardian of my survival and my legacy. Years later, when I recount the events, I do not speak of revenge or anger. I speak of clarity, courage, and the enduring power of truth. Lucas and Claire's choices did not define the entirety of my existence. They merely highlighted the importance of vigilance and the value of those who act when others fail. The spilled coffee, the whispered warning, the swift action, all of it became a symbol of survival, of life reclaimed from the edge of tragedy. I am Sandra Whitlock. I survived betrayal at the hands of my own blood. I survived because of the courage of someone who owed me nothing, someone who refused to stay silent. I rebuilt my life, protected my legacy, and helped others avoid the mistakes I once nearly paid for with my life. And while the scars remain, so does clarity. I live beyond betrayal, beyond fear, and beyond expectation. I live because I chose to act, because I chose awareness, because I refused to let greed dictate my fate. Survival, I have learned, is not about the absence of danger. It is about the presence of courage, the refusal to ignore the signs, and the quiet, unwavering support of those who act when no one else dares. And sometimes, those people are not the ones we love by birth, but the ones we choose to trust with our lives.